On the knowledge side, on the lack of visibility challenge, if you are coaching for remote teams that also have physical environments, in other words, you have a hybrid team or hybrid organization, it's a little tougher to do. I'll tell you that one of the things that we discovered during COVID was that the idea that everyone was remote actually made it work well. When we started to go back into the office and we're having more hybrid environments, we're starting to come up against the difficulties that make remote Agile team collaboration difficult. So as coaches, we want to coach for remote equality. We want to coach around the idea that individuals that are remote should have the same visibility as individuals that are in the office. And that means setting up an office environment, if there's a physical environment that has digital assets. That means that we're offering the opportunity for individuals in the physical environment to interact with that digital environment. That means having a dedicated tool administrator that can help remote and local individuals for those digital settings. And that means that we have information radiators throughout the office and in the digital environment as well that are synchronizing. These were not challenges that we had before. It is imperative that we are now practicing equal access to these artifacts for members that are remote as well as for members that are local or co-located. Okay. The last part on the challenges aspect is the idea that those artifacts, those things that go beyond the Agile artifacts, right, or the Scrum artifacts are actually accessible to us as coaches. How many times do we go into an organization not understanding the organization chart or the org chart? The team composition, who's who in the teams, or who? How are those teams organized?
Hi, Ernesto, we have a question.
Yeah.
What does it mean to job team? Can you clarify?
Say that again.
What does it mean to job team? Can you clarify?
Job team. I don't understand that. Do I have a typo? Maybe that's a typo.
I might be meant for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be meant for me. Never mind.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Not a
it's
problem.
on our LinkedIn Live. I'm looking at it now. Yep.
Sounds good. Let me know if it comes up as a question that I can help with. Okay. The lack of visibility that we have as coaches, it's a real problem if we don't prepare for it. What I mean by that, we tend to go into organizations sometimes blind. Why? Because it was easy to do in a time when we could walk the hallway. We can actually go into these organizations and understand the structure and understand the players and understand the meetings that were taking place if we were in a physical location. In a digital environment, we need to be more methodical, as I said at the beginning of this session. We need to really get behind the idea that as we are entering an organization, we should try to gather as much information ahead of time in a structured way. The artifacts that I myself orient around, I want to understand the organization. I want to understand the team composition. I want to understand when the teams are meeting. And by the way, if you get a non-applicable for some of those teams, that's okay too. But at least now we know what we didn't know before, right? You want to identify any peripheral key stakeholders. Is there a PMO? Who are the individuals in the support organization and that might be feeding requirements into the product team? Things of this nature are very important, and they used to happen by us simply being around and someone tapping us in the shoulder. That's not happening in a remote environment? And are there any additional artifacts? Some teams have style guides. They should have a definition of done. Is there an organizational definition of done? All questions that you should be asking as a remote coach to make sure that you have a library that allows you to get visibility into the things that are important to coach around and for you to insert yourself into the conversations that are relevant for the organization and the transformation. Okay. With that, so we've covered the 4 challenges, and I am going to also add a quick view that is not so much specific to remote coaching, but because we also talked about models, I wanted to be fair to some of those transformation models and frameworks that you might be familiar with or may not. So adding here the approaches at Agile Genesis, we follow the 8 steps of process for leading change by John Carter that you might be familiar with, things like creating a sense of urgency, which is for us, defining the problem, what are the things that we're trying to solve, and then creating the coalition. That means identifying the individuals that are going to be a part of that transformation and help us by being an active member and owning a part of that responsibility, creating a vision and communicating that out, and then empowering the teams and having actual small implementations that we use as the example to amplify the benefits throughout the organization as we scale the implementation, what Carter calls the quick wins. And then building on that change so that we inspect and adapt and we make it stick with things like communities of practice and ensuring that the leadership and other individuals are active participants once we are exiting that organization, right? So our job is to put ourselves out of work as soon as possible in such a way that the organization becomes self-sufficient. And so that's the Carter model that we follow. Scrum at Scale has a transformation roadmap as well that includes going to see the problem and all the way including training and also having the formation of the executive action team and the executive meta scrum, among other teams. And many of you might be familiar with the SAFE transformation roadmap, which essentially is around the idea of engaging in various training aspects, identifying the value streams, and essentially forming the art and repeating that with the help of an SPC in such a way that continues to grow throughout the organization in the form of ARTs or Agile release trains. Okay, so offering these, I know these are not specific to remote engagements, but wanted to also match some of what we just discussed and give you a little bonus, if you will, here on some of the transformation approaches that are most common. Okay.